As the days went by, Chike's guilt began to consume him. Every time he looked at Amara, he felt like a monster. She was so kind, so trusting, and yet he had betrayed her in the worst way possible. He remembered the day he found out he couldn't have children. It had been a devastating blow to his pride. Mr. Chike, the doctor had said gently, I am sorry, but the test shows that you are infertile. You won't be able to father children. Chike had stared at the doctor, disbelief and anger bubbling inside him. No, he had said, shaking his head. That is not possible. You must be wrong. I wish I were, the doctor replied, but the results are clear. I understand this is hard to accept, but there are other options you can consider. For example, like adoption. But Chike had not wanted to hear about adoption. He had grown up in a culture where having children was seen as a man's ultimate responsibility. How could he face his family, his friends, or even his wife, Amara? When Amara began asking about starting a family, Chike panicked. He could not bear the thought of disappointing her or letting the world see his failure. That was when he turned to Vincent, a shady friend from his university days. Vincent had connections, people who could help Chike maintain the illusion of a normal marriage, no matter the cost. But now, as Chike watched Amara move around the house, humming softly to herself, he felt a deep sense of shame. She deserved better than this. She deserved the truth, Chike said to himself. Amara, he called out suddenly, his voice trembling. She turned to him with a smile. Yes, darling. For a moment, Chike wanted to tell her everything, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he smiled at her and said, Nothing. I just wanted to say I love you. Amara laughed slightly. I love you too, Chike. As she walked away, Chike's heart sank. He knew he was running out of time. The cracks in his perfect lie were starting to show, and it was only a matter of time before everything will fall apart. Chike's sleepless nights became a routine. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Amara's face, full of trust, and it felt like a dagger to his heart. That evening, he sat in the living room, pretending to watch the news while Amara was busy in the kitchen. His thoughts wandered to the first time he considered his plan. It was Vincent who suggested the idea over a quiet dinner at a restaurant. You are desperate, Chike, Vincent had said, leaning back in his chair. You want children, right? But you can't have them. You want to keep your wife, right? But she won't stay forever if she finds out the truth about your infertility. Chike had glared at him. Do you think I don't know that? I need a solution, Vincent, a real one. Vincent smiled. There is a way. It's unconventional, but it will solve your problem. What way? Chike asked, leaning forward. You get someone else to do the job, quietly, without your wife knowing, Vincent said, his voice low. She would think it's you and no one will ever know the difference. Chike had recoiled at first. That's insane. How would that even work? Simple, Vincent replied. There are people who are specialized in these sort of things. You would need to drug your wife, just a mid-sedative to ensure she does not remember. The rest will be handled by the professionals. it's clean, discreet, and it works. At the time, Chike had been horrified, but desperation clouded his judgment. Over the next few weeks, Vincent convinced him that it was the only way to protect his marriage. Now, sitting in his living room, years later, Chike could barely stomach the memory. While Chike wrestled with his guilt, Amara continued her search for the truth. She could not shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. That morning, as Chike left for work, she decided to call his secretary, Nkechi, under the guise of checking on a business schedule. "Good morning, Mrs. Chike," Nkechi said warmly over the phone. "How can I help you?" "Good morning, Nkechi," Amara replied. "I was wondering if my husband has been visiting any new clients or places lately. He has been so busy and I want to plan something special for him." Nkechi hesitated. "Well, there's nothing unusual about his schedule, but what?" Amara asked, her heart pounding. Nkechi lowered her voice. "Well, he's been meeting with Mr. Vincent a lot lately. I'm not sure what it's about, but they have had several private meetings in the last few months." Amara's chest tightened. She had heard Chike mention Vincent before. "Do you know this Vincent? Do you know who this Vincent is?" she asked Nkechi. "I think he is an old friend from their university days," Nkechi said. "But honestly, I don't know much about him. He does not seem like the type of person your husband usually works with." Amara thanked Nkechi and ended the call, her mind racing. Who was this Vincent? And what was his connection to Chike's strange behavior? Determined to find out the truth, she decided to search for more clues. If Vincent was involved, it might be the key to unraveling Chike's secret. As she paced the living room, her eyes fell on Chike's laptop. He rarely left it at home, but today he had forgotten it in his rush to leave for work. Amara hesitated, biting her lips. She did not want to invade his privacy, but something inside her urged her to take a look. Taking a deep breath, she opened the laptop and began searching. It was not long before she stumbled upon a folder labeled "Private." Inside, she found emails between Chike and Vincent detailing the arrangement. Her blood ran cold as she read the messages. "Everything is set for the next session," one email read. "Make sure she takes the sedative beforehand. The process must remain smooth and undiscovered." Amara dropped the laptop, her hands trembling. Tears streamed down her face as the horrifying reality sank in. Chike had betrayed her in a way she could never have imagined. Amara sat on the couch, staring at the laptop in disbelief. The words on the screen swayed before her eyes, each one cutting deep into her heart. Chike, the man she loved with all her soul, had betrayed her in the most unimaginable way. The image between him and Vincent painted a terrifying picture, one that she could no longer ignore. She had been drugged for months. She had been a part of Chike's cruel plan, believing in the lie that their marriage was perfect. Her hands shook as she closed the laptop. The room felt suffocating and she had to get out. She grabbed her bag and left the house, not knowing where she was going, but needing to escape the overwhelming flood of emotion. She walked for hours, her mind consumed with questions and anger. How could Chike do this to her? Why didn't he trust her enough to tell her the truth? She had given him everything, her love, her trust, her heart, and in return, he had taken it all for granted. As the sun began to set, Amara found herself at the edge of a quiet park. She sat on a bench, her thoughts still racing. She thought about the woman she used to be before all the lies, before the pains. She had been happy. She had believed in the dream that she and Chike were building together. Now that dream had crumbled. I need to confront him, Amara whispered to herself, her voice barely audible in the evening breeze. I need answers. Later that night, when Chike returned home, Amara was waiting for him. She sat in the dimly lit room, her face unreadable. Chike entered the house, his usual confidence stride faltering slightly when he saw her. Amara, you are still up? He asked, sounding surprised. Amara stood slowly, her eyes meeting his. I know everything, Chike, she said, her voice steady but filled with pain. Chike's face turned pale. What do you mean? He forced a smile, but it was weak, almost as if he was trying to convince himself. Amara took a deep breath. I know about the pills. I know about Vincent. I know everything. For a moment, there was silence. Chike's gaze dropped to the floor, unable to look at her. Amara, please, he began, his voice pleading. Let me explain. Amara shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. Explain? How do you explain drugging me, Chike? How do you explain lying to me, using me like a pawn in your game? I trusted you. I loved you. Chike took a step forward, his hands outreached as if to reach for her, but Amara pulled away. Don't touch me, she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and sorrow. I never wanted to hurt you, Chike said, his voice cracking. I did this because I love you. You wanted a family, Amara. I wanted to give you that, but I could not. I could not face the truth. I could not stand losing you. Amara's heart ached at the desperation in his voice, but the pain of his betrayal was too much. So you thought drugging me and letting other men sleep with me was the way to keep me? She asked bitterly. You thought that would protect me? You thought that would make me stay? I did not know what else to do, Chike cried out. You wanted children. You did not know that I could not give you that. I could not bear to tell you the truth. I did not want to lose you. Tears streaming down her face, her body trembling with emotion. I would never leave you because of something like that. And you know that. I love you, Chike, but this is unforgivable. I am sorry. I am so sorry, Amara. I never meant for any of this to happen. Amara stood still, her eyes fixed on him. The man she had once known, the man she had once loved, was gone. In his place was a stranger, a man filled with guilt, shame, and fear. She did not know what to do. She did not know if she could ever forgive him. I need time, Chike, Amara said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. I need to think about everything. I don't know what's going to happen now. With that, she turned and walked towards the door. Chike did not stop her. He knew she had every right to leave, every right to walk away from the lies, the pains, and the broken trust. And though it shattered him to see her go, he knew that he had no one to blame but himself. Amara stepped into the night, her heart heavy with weight of everything she had learned. The truth had shattered her world, but now she had to find a way to rebuild it, even if it meant walking away from the man she had once loved, even if it meant stepping into the unknown. She did not know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of strength within herself. She would heal, she would survive, and she would make her own choices from now on. Amara did not leave that night. Instead, she returned home, her mind racing with thoughts of how to confront the betrayer. Laying awake in bed, with Chike sleeping restlessly beside her, an idea began to take shape in Amara's mind. She could not just walk away. No, not after everything Chike has done to her. Chike needed to feel the same pain, the same humiliation that he had put me through, she said to herself.